Welcome to Conversations with a Community Leader, sponsored by the Leadership Kitsap Foundation. I'm your host and Leadership Kitsap alum, David Walters. Today with me, I have Joe Crain, Executive Director of the St. Vincent de Paul in Bremerton. Joe, thank you for coming.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
St. Vincent de Paul has been serving Kitsap County for over 80 years. Yep, you heard me right, over 80 years. They have 3 locations, the food bank on Callow, the newly relocated thrift store on Wheaton Way, and of course, the Stella Maris House, the women's shelter. So Joe, before we start talking about all things St. Vincent de Paul, let's talk about you. Where are you originally from?
Well, I was born in Seattle, and I grew up out in Graham, Washington. And except for 3 years, I lived out in eastern Washington, up in Schwillican Valley, up on Tunk Mountain.
Oh, pretty.
Yeah, it was beautiful out there, but for those 3 years, we didn't have any power or water. We lived out in pretty austere
Wow.
living conditions for a little bit over there in eastern Washington for some time. But I graduated from Bethel High School in Spanaway, and then I joined the Navy right after I graduated. And my dad either owned or managed a service station my whole life, so I grew up learning how to work on cars. But I knew that wasn't something I wanted to pursue as a career. So my dad's best friend, actually at the time, was in the 7th graduating class of King County Medic 1. And it really inspired me to look into the medical field. And because I was a poor student in school, I didn't become a good student until later in life. That and probably our poor background, I couldn't afford college right out of high school. Mm-hmm. And so I joined the Navy to pursue my medical career. So I joined the Navy as a hospital corpsman, and I did 20 years in the Navy, never assigned to a ship in those 20 years. I got stationed with the Marines.
As a corpsman?
As a corpsman. So as a combat medic, essentially, for the Marine Corps. And I received a lot of education, both with leadership and informal education in that regard in the Navy, with a lot of formal education around the medical field and hospital management and clinic management and things.
So where did you serve at?
I served in several locations. I did 2 tours down in 29 Palms, California, 2 different times. I'm glad I didn't do 6 years back to back there. And then I did 3 years managing the clinic for the Navy in Cornwall, England. And I did 2 combat tours in Iraq and 2 combat tours in Afghanistan. And I finished out my career at Naval Hospital, Camp Pendleton, and started working for a community health center down there, North County Health Services, right after I retired from the Navy as their director of operations. They asked me to build up a new, they called it the Patient Navigation Center. And so it was a great job for me right out of the Navy to build something like that, where they had 11 clinics across North County, and they all individually were doing their own appointments and such. Oh. And so they wanted a central customer service hub, really, that would connect the patients to each of those clinics centrally. And so I was asked to build that out.
So you had, when you're in the Navy, you both got obviously a lot of in the field experience and administrative experience too then, which kind of lined you up for that.
It did, especially that my last duty there at the Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton set me up for healthcare administration, which some of my education backgrounds from is in that.
And then, so where did you go after that?
I was able to talk my wife into moving back home to Washington State, which I'd been wanting to do right after I retired.
Okay.
But San Diego was her first exposure to the United States. She's French.
Oh,
and I met her when I was stationed in Cornwall. She had just finished her master's program out of Paris, and I was a single parent living there in Cornwall after my 2 combat tours, and she's one of the miracles of my life. And so I finally talked her into moving up here because our 2 boys were born.
Okay.
And at least they can be close to my parents. It'd be real difficult for them to be close to her parents.
Right.
So that's what got me up here to Washington, and I became the chief operations officer at Sound Family Medicine and Puyallup.
Oh, okay.
And I was there just prior to coming to St. Vincent de Paul. I was there 3 years. And then I came over to St. Vincent de Paul 4 months before COVID hit.
Oh, I'm sure that's interesting.
It was very interesting. My first nonprofit.
Okay, so what? So that's kind of a kind of a switch to go to a nonprofit.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of our executive directors of nonprofits have kind of had that career on and off throughout their experience, but you came from the Navy that way.
Yeah. Well, I had the opportunity to talk with Dr. Gib Morrow from Kitsap Public Health this last week, and it was during that conversation, it was reminding me how the time in the Navy, in Navy medicine, which is world-class medicine, prepared me for learning the healthcare side, and then my time as a healthcare administrator as a civilian. We learn a lot about social determinants of health and concepts around high utilizers and folks utilizing the ER, or maybe seeing their provider 15, 20 times a year may not be a good balance or healthy for them.
So how did you guys settle on Kitsap then?
It's a great question. So I found my forever home out on the Key Peninsula.
Okay.
I lived out on Bay Lake down there, and I was commuting those 3 years over the Tacoma Narrows Bridge to Sound Family Medicine. And finally just thought it would be great that I find something on this side of the bridge, so I started looking.
And you thought with COVID coming that social services would be an easy thing to jump into.
No, it was amazing. When we don't know that COVID is coming, that was quite a surprise to us all.
So
I actually thought I was going to be running some clinics for a large healthcare group over here, is what originally enticed me to come this way. And as sometimes job hunting goes, those doors were closing, and this door with St. Vincent de Paul was opening up. And I was wondering, what is this all about? What am I going to be doing? And now I get to make an impact on this side of the continuum of care, and focus more on the social determinants of health and healthy lifestyles, healthy living.
So let's move into St. Vincent de Paul. I mean, that's the thing we all want to talk about.
Yeah.
Because it's exciting what you're doing, what's been going on for 80 years.
Yes.
And so you have three main focuses right now.
That's right.
Why don't we go over those quickly?
Yeah, we've been serving the community since 1937, and up until my arrival, that was all being done by a volunteer board, believe it or not.
Yeah,
So
you're the first executive director we had.
First executive director at St. Vincent de Paul for
That's
Bremerton here. And after a time of strategic vision for the board, they determined that in order to execute that strategic vision, they need somebody there on a daily basis that can manage day-to-day operations and bring the teams together. Because really, there were in the definitions of siloed departments. Thrift store was doing its thing, the food bank was doing its thing, and the Stella Maris house was kind of on its own. So another calling was to bring the whole team together, because it is all one organization where all those fall under one tax ID. And I was called to bring them all together as one team.
Wow, that's exciting. So let's talk about how many customers do you serve?
Yeah.
Across all three of your platforms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Platforms. I hope that's the right word.
Yeah, platforms or departments or areas of service.
Okay.
So we focus on the three basic, or Maslow's foundational needs of food, clothing, and shelter. That's our area of expertise, and we do clothing through the thrift store, which last year we provided over 1,500 clothing vouchers to those that are experiencing homelessness.
Wow.
That equates to about 7,200 articles of clothing last year alone.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I have a vision that we are or will be the clothier for the homeless in our area, as the primary clothier.
And so your thrift store, it is a retail space or a retail store, so anyone can use it. It's not
Correct.
just please viewers. Spend your money at the thrift store.
Yeah, and come check out the new location. It's very large.
Still growing into
Still
it.
growing into it, absolutely. And it's a fun shopping experience, absolutely. And the money goes directly back into our conference. Even though St. Vincent de Paul started in Paris in 1833, and it's an international organization, we're not connected corporately like some of our competitors.
Oh, okay.
So your money is donated local, stays local. And we also started in 2023 rounding up, as a lot of organizations do, but for our own operations. So when you round up at the thrift store for the Stella Maris House, that goes directly to the shelter operations.
Oh, okay.
Which the shelter is a 22-bed women and children shelter. We've been operating that for about 12 years now. And we're the only St. Vincent de Paul in Washington State that operates a shelter.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's another neat thing for our conference here locally. And then the food bank, or resource center, as we've come to call it, because we're more than just a food pantry. We also provide rental assistance and utility assistance to those we serve. To give you an idea of our volume, we did over 720,000 pounds of food last year. We did over $40,000 in rental assistance last year, and over $30,000 in utility assistance last year as well.
Oh, wow. Those are big numbers.
It shows.
And are you primarily in Bremerton, or how far out do you extend your services? Because I know there's other organizations, like Fishline in Paulsbo. They do your boundaries kind of touch, or do you guys not really care about boundaries?
We don't anymore.
Okay.
I think it was actually part of the funding that we had to keep it regulated to zip code. Well, that went away a few years back.
Oh, okay.
And so since my arrival, we no longer check, zip code, where somebody's at. Really, it's no questions asked.
And St. Vincent de Paul has an interesting policy where they turn no one away.
That's correct.
Which is just, wow, that just tugs at the heartstrings.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, St. Vincent de Paul is a very diverse organization. We're very big on diversity. I value it personally from a leadership perspective, because the more diverse the team is, the more creative and innovative the team can be.
Absolutely.
And anytime a new protected class becomes known to our society, we add it to our list of folks we don't discriminate against, because it's need, not creed. Really, all means all. And we're finding all across our organizations how better to serve and to remove barriers across the board for anybody, and that goes for employment as well. So volunteerism, employment, and you don't have to be Catholic.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a Catholic organization in its roots, in its name, and probably in its service. In the service in the center of it.
Yeah.
But you certainly don't have to be Catholic to volunteer there.
Nor
to work there.
Nor work there. I happen to be I'm a man of faith, but I'm not of the Catholic background. I'm a Protestant Christian myself. And another thing that brought me to St. Vincent de Paul, as those other doors were closing and these doors were opening, is how my faith has aligned really close with the mission and outreach that St. Vincent de Paul is called to for our community.
Very satisfying job.
Very satisfying.
So how can the community get involved?
In a lot of different ways, primarily through volunteerism. We value your physical presence and service above even monetary donations. On a daily basis, it's a great opportunity for folks to come in. They don't have to spend all week there. That's another preconception. I'd like to remove that stressor if you're wanting to come and volunteer for us. Some folks only give 2 hours on an afternoon, one day a week, for example. And that could be tailored to what your personal schedule is to come and serve. And
you need volunteer in all 3 of your locations?
Primarily in 2.
Okay.
In the Resource Center and in the Thrift Store. There's volunteer opportunities for both of those areas. because of the sensitive nature of the shelter,
Right.
we don't.
You have trained individuals. there.
Correct. We have trained individuals in there.
So how many paid employees do you have?
We have 31.
Wow, that big. Okay.
Yeah, 31. Most of them are at the thrift store. We are a second chance employer as another part of our service to the community. If anyone is justice impacted, we definitely take everybody as on a case-by-case basis, but that's not an immediate barrier to employment for us.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. And then, so what are some of your biggest challenges?
I think finding volunteers across the board, especially at the thrift store. We'd like to take more donations for those that have donated to us, especially since our move, trying to get our staffing balance just right there and manage the influx of donations.
And how much bigger is your new store than your previous store?
It's 2/3 larger.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got space to fill.
We do.
So you will take lots of donations.
We want the donations, but we need volunteers to help process those donations and to help get them out onto the floor. And a lot of people are drawn to our resource center, which we need them there as well. But we'd also like to see increased volunteerism at the thrift store as well. Monetary donations have been very supportive as well, and people can support in that way. And we also resell those physical donations that people bring into the thrift store also. And we're that traditional model that the things that are sold at the thrift store go right back to our operations immediately. So we don't have to share those with other St. Vincent de Paul at another location.
So you get 100% of the dollar to...
It's right back into the resource center. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what's kind of next for St. Vincent de Paul?
We have a lot of exciting plans from our strategic planning. One of them is development on our 2 acres of land that we own in between Callow and Wyckoff. We're still working out details with the city and the
Because those buildings are getting older.
They are.
Let's just say they're old.
They are old. The food pantry and resource center, for example, is in the old Johnson lumber yard from 1941.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely at end of life. And the thrift store was, that building was built in the mid-'80s. And we have some plans for that area of the property. To better serve the community in the future. You know, we've been serving the community for almost 100 years, and now we need to set up our facilities and resources and better preparation to serve the community for the next 100 years.
So some very long-term thinking.
Yes.
That's excellent. So to kind of switch gears, talk about leadership. Obviously, being in the Navy, you not only got your job experience, but you got tons of leadership experience.
Oh yes, absolutely.
That just comes with, which is why veterans are the best employees we could ever hire. They come with everything.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Did you have a specific leader or mentor that you looked up to as you were coming or developing yourself and growing?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've come to know that there's 2 forms of knowledge: explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is what you find out of a book or out of a class or formal education, which I was able to get while I was utilizing tuition assistance. I was a rare breed in that I retired from the Navy with 2 master's degrees. MBA with healthcare cognate, is focused on healthcare administration, and Master of Arts in Management and Leadership. And I did that because of the deployments I had. Instead of playing all the video games on the shared drive or watching the movies that a lot of my Marine counterparts were doing,
you were cracking the books.
I cracked the books. And if I'm going to be away from home and in an area that's not very pleasant, I'm going to make it worthwhile.
Right.
I want to make it worthwhile. So I worked on my education, and a lot of that education was focused on management and leadership, but also looking to physical examples and actual leaders. And I saw a lot of leadership that I didn't enjoy. And I
think we
was
can learn
able,
almost as much from them as well.
absolutely. And I was able to see that's a leader I don't want to be. But one of my biggest mentors was Master Chief Kel Carter. He's left a lasting imprint on me.
It's funny how we remember their names.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely great man. And he has left a lasting impression on me and my leadership, and really showed me the example of servant leadership and the importance of servant leadership.
Okay. I know you have a couple leadership books that you wanted to share, or
Yeah.
self-development books that you've enjoyed.
Yeah.
What are those?
Well, the two books, unfortunately for me, I'm not a big reader, but I was exposed to a lot of books in my studies
I'm
on
sure.
leadership, and taking advantage of the downtime in COVID. Like I mentioned before, if we're going to be going through some rough times, I'm going to take advantage of this. So I obtained my executive certificate in strategic leadership. And one of the books that was within that course of study was Serving Leadership. And that's authored by, I want to make sure I get this right here, Kenneth Jennings and John Stalwart. It's called The Serving Leader. Very impactful book on telling a story about his own journey in leadership and the impact from different mentors, friends of his father. So I definitely recommend that book. And then I also recommend Jesus on Leadership, which is a servant leadership book as well. And that's written by Gene Wilkes, I believe. Yeah.
Excellent. You know, we're building a pretty good, I ask that question every time, and I think we're building a pretty good library for people to, resource library for people to look into. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for, one, your service to our country, and to all the wonderful things you guys are doing for Kitsap County.
Thank you very much.
So please visit svdpbremerton.com and leadershipkitsap.org for more information about both organizations. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to next time on Conversations with a Community Leader.